Hi, everybody. We're back. So I'm Jasmine Navarro, certified family coach, and I work with families and the youth in educational institutions and companies, giving workshops around well-being and one-to-one sessions. And as you know, every week I interview different experts who share how they make a difference in people's lives. And today I'm super excited to be interviewing Dr. Shefali. Dr. Shefali, can you tell us about yourself, please?
Hi. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to chat. I am a doctor. I have had a medical practice in Dubai now for 12 years. I'm an integrative medical specialist. So I really look at chronic diseases. I look for sort of root cause. And I'm very much interested in sort of like proactive healthcare. That's kind of like where my purpose is now, like driving towards education. And, I don't believe it's too early to educate on proactive health, because I don't believe like any illnesses happen sort of overnight. And so I like to have people informed and make changes before they can, really.
Oh, yeah, that's so important. And I love what you said about getting to the root cause. And I guess we're going to talk about that. So back to basics to feel our best. So what made you choose this title? And I love it as well, by the way.
Well, I mean, timing of this talk for a start is the beginning of the year. That's kind of like where most people make their sort of New Year's resolutions. Although I feel like we don't need to wait for like 1st of January to do that. We should always kind of be like looking at, things throughout the year. But I think people find health when they decide to go down this path quite complicated. And because they find it complicated, they find it difficult to start, not knowing where to start. And actually, I believe that we miss out all the simple things. We miss out all the things that we can do and nail and have it as part of us first. And we're looking for all the big things, the big diets, the big, revolutionary supplements. We're looking at like big life-changing things. And because they feel so big, they're so difficult to start. But I really, truly believe that, it's the smaller things that you do that it can accumulate in the bigger like changes that you want. And I remember being at medical school, one of my mentors told me really early on, and he said, like, common things are common. And in everything that I see, in every patient that I see, I always think common things are common. When people come in to see a doctor, they're always scared of like the worst case scenario, and they miss out on all the little things, And I believe that really for me, this year is about trying to educate on like hope and being able to like make the changes, because it is actually the small things that make the biggest difference first.
Oh, I absolutely love that. And I think we can take that mindset into every area of our life, can't we? And I think so often we get paralyzed because, we're trying to figure out the big thing, the thing that's going to make the biggest change. But like you said, it's the tiny, tiny, tiny steps and habits that actually are the most important things and make the biggest impact.
I also feel that like diseases, like I just said, like don't happen overnight. So it's always like this, and then that. And when that happens, everyone's like, oh, doctor, now fix me. What's wrong with me? But it's not the that requires fixing. It's all of the little thises that lead up to the that actually needs to be looked at, so that once we get over this hurdle of this, that now, it's the little thises that you need to like monitor and change so that the that doesn't happen again. And I think, again, it's all the little accumulative weak links that happen that lead up to that like big event that requires, oh, now we're going to look at it. Recently I had a patient who actually came in because she noticed that she's having sort of vitiligo, like sort of depigmented areas where the color is, less of the same color. She's having like sort of white patches. Okay. And when you listen to her story and you go through her entire history, you can see at different points of her life, she's gone through things that she just let go of sleep, and she let go of food, and she let go of, and she never really visited anyone. But because it's on her face and she sees it every day, and it's like vanity driven, and now like, is this going to get bigger? I need to do something now. I need to do something now. But this isn't something that actually happened overnight.
Yes.
It's something that was led through several different triggers, and that's often a lot of the man-made illnesses that I believe a lot of them are, a lot of them really are man-made versus we think of them being inherited. And I really truly believe that, is it really inherited? Is it really our genes, or is it the same lifestyle we inherit from several generations that lead to the same disease?
Wow. Oh, that's such an interesting question. And yeah, my instinct would just say, yeah, it's our lifestyle. Of course, genes as well, but I do think it's our lifestyle and how we are and the decisions we make every day. But so I love everything. Or let's just say Happy New Year. Happy New Year, Hind. How are you doing?
Yeah, Happy New Year.
I forgot to say Happy New Year. I just keep forgetting it's the beginning of the year.
Yes, I know, actually. That's so true.
It's
so
true.
Rude. I don't even think we wished each other Happy New Year when we got onto this call. So Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everybody. And hi, Ashik. Thank you so much. Well said. Right. And I love that Hind said as well. Yeah. So what was I going to say? Yeah. So I completely agree with you. The small habits and sometimes a lot of the time we don't take action until it's in our face and it's quite dangerous. Maybe it's serious. So what would you say would be the first place to start then? Because I know, like you said, it's difficult to start. We get overwhelmed. What do we do? Where do we start?
So one of the things that I always try and educate when I go into the corporate settings to be able to introduce what should a health culture within an organization mean is to actually talk about what I call the sort of 7 daily multipliers. About 3-4 years ago, I worked with a company called Flow to Thrive, and Linda, who's the co-founder of that, we came up with this term, what we call the 7 daily multipliers. So how should we live? And I believe they were 7, now they're 8. And I go through what I call, these are our controllable stresses, and these are our lifestyle factors. So, obviously there's eating, there's sleeping, there's, moving, there's thinking, so your thought process, the meditation aspect in terms of how can you control your mind, your social environment, who you spend time with. And that also includes things like, who you work with. I mean, you may spend 8 hours a day with people that you actually don't enjoy being with. That is actually a big part of your day. So when you come home, you have to kind of fill that bucket up somehow with who you spend quality time with. Because even though you could be surrounded by people, isolation is a form of torture. And so one can be surrounded, but one can still feel lonely. So it's really important to think about, your social environment. It's also really important to think about when you look at moving. People start their new healthy habits with exercise. But sometimes your type of exercise you choose isn't going to fit where you are today. A lot of times people think that, when they're exhausted, I've still got to move, I've still got to do it. They'll come home and they're like, I'll go for a 5K run. But they probably don't have the right amount of petrol that can actually sustain that 5K run, really, that they're actually doing more harm. So simple things is to choose one habit and nail it before you move on to the next habit for a start, so that it doesn't feel like, I've got to do all these things in one. And I say this all the time in clinic. You don't actually need to use all your secret weapons at once. It's a lovely feeling to feel that you have all these superpowers, but I don't need to use them all at the same time. When you start using all your superpowers at once, it's not a lifestyle. It's a diet. It's temporary. It's not sustainable. It's about creating. I actually did a post on consistency yesterday as my superpower. But, I think it's really important to do your first thing that you can achieve, do it well, get it down, make it part of your lifestyle, and then move on to the next. That's one of the most important things that I think, if every year you're able to even have it in your mind. So you may not be able to sleep 9 hours every day because it's just not achievable because you're only used to 6. But even if you slept 6.5, if you slept 7, that is better than 6. So it's not that you failed because you didn't reach 8. You actually are winning because you did not sleep 6. It's about being kind to yourself in a way that I feel like, again, we're not doing that. We
Yeah.
overmove, we undereat, you know? I mean, we don't understand nutrition. Another thing that I think is back to basics is learn about basic nutrition. How many people really understand carbohydrates, proteins, and fats? What they're useful for, why they're important, in what quantities are they important, instead of looking at all the fad, diets, I guess, because they're not sustainable. Everything doesn't fit everyone. And I think it's really important to really going back to basics to make consistent changes that are going to become a habit. I now have started to say is to find a coach, really, because I think people don't look at somebody as a coach who can actually look at me from above and look at my life in general and be like, where can I manipulate what and what's the right priority for me in this moment?
Yes, yeah. I think that's really true, because it is hard to do it all by yourself, isn't it? Like, we do need help sometimes, and that's okay. But I loved what you said about basically there's no quick fix, and I think so many times we're looking for instant gratification, aren't we? We just want this quick fix, but we know deep down it's not going to work. Surely we know that the diet's not really going to work. Like, I know
it might work for a short amount of time and you get happy for a short amount of time, but you haven't fixed anything from the root because you haven't understood what you're trying to achieve. And that instant gratification, I think, has become much more of a problem since the era of social media, where you get to see like, oh, well, she looked and she was, look at her before and look at her after, or his and look at him, if he can do it, why can't I do it? And people have stopped looking at their individual surroundings. People have forgotten to think that, okay, everybody who posts, or not everybody, but a lot of people who post will post their best side. No one really posts their struggles, this is why 2023 is the era of breaking cycles. I wish to show people good side, bad sides, because I think that you need to be human and you need to have flaws, and the flaws actually make you more perfect, and people they're not doing that. So I think we're following this perception of how we think we need to be, and not allowing ourselves to be really, and that's a problem.
Definitely. And all of that pressure then that we put on ourselves as well. Oh, Khalil. Oh, hi, Khalil. How are you? Any tips to feel mentally your best?
I mean, mentally at best is a really difficult one, but I always think that the best can always be better, so you'll only know how well you can feel when you feel it. So for me, you never know, right? Like, you don't really know, like, what does best mean? I mean, what does happiness mean? But I think a lot of times when you know that you're mentally not okay is because you've kind of let things go out of control. That's when you get that sense of that overwhelming feeling. And I feel that when we look at adrenal fatigue and sort of that burnt out, overwhelming feeling, not able to now control the stress that you're having, that's kind of going into that phase where I'm not mentally okay. And I always talk about the stress bucket. I believe we have one bucket and we need to label it stress. People say, but there's good stress and there's bad stress. Yes, but the body only actually recognizes stress as one feeling, one term, whether it's good or bad.
Really? Oh, wow. Okay.
And you have the uncontrollable stresses and you have the uncontrollable stresses. So the uncontrollable stresses is like your job, or, a death in the family, or like divorce, and things that you can't really change today or tomorrow that are going to always weigh you down. And then you have the controllable stresses, which are your lifestyle factors. I always say in times where you're feeling your lowest, you should try to still maintain control of your controllable factors. You should try and still care about what you eat. You should try and care about, a little bit of movement. You should still try and meet your friends. You should still, the people that you trust, you should still try and talk. You should still try and meditate. You should drink the right fluids, that are going to perk you up. Because often what happens is you feel really down, and what do? You're like, I don't want to talk to anyone. I'm going to eat whatever I want.
You eat rubbish, yeah.
I'm going to be bloated. I can't sleep. I'm not going to exercise. And then you feel worse because now you're not in a good state. And when something else happens, it's going to tip out your water. That overwhelming feeling is when your bucket now starts to overflow. And the only way you can control this bucket from overflowing is controlling the controllable stresses. If me and you, we both had a paper cut, and I was bloated, I didn't sleep, I didn't exercise, I haven't seen my friends in a long time, and I get this paper cut, it's going to be that stick that broke that camel's back. Whereas if you got a paper cut and you slept well, you managed to do your 15, 20 minutes of exercise, you're not bloated, you're hydrated, you've been seeing your friends, you feel like you've got support, you know what? The same paper cut isn't going to affect you the same way.
Wow, so true, so true.
Right? It's those two types of people. It's managing the controllable stresses. But we tend to let go of all those things, you know? And I would say to feel your mentally best in the situation that you're in currently, where you only have control of a certain amount of factors, is try and pick up on your lifestyle factors that you can control and try and maintain them and try and, you know, learn about them and do little things. Little half an hour here's, little 5 minutes here's, knowing that in your mind you're trying. Trying gives people a lot of hope, and hope is a lot of more positivity than no trying and no hope.
You're right. You know? And the tiny actions as well, like you said, even if you do something for 5 minutes, and sometimes you think, oh, what's the point? It's nothing. But once you've done it, that does help you do the next thing. 100%. And then the next thing, doesn't it?
It's a mindset, right? It actually starts the domino effect of mindset.
Yeah.
I always say 5 minutes of something is a whole lot better than 5 minutes of nothing.
Yeah. No, exactly. And Khalil says, I like this expression, best can always be better. Keeping targets moving.
Yeah, well, realistically.
Yeah.
Right? Realistically. Nail it and move on.
Yeah. And I like what you said as well. It is about moving. Doesn't matter how small or slow, just something. Even 1 minute is better than nothing, isn't it? It's just like, because when you feel stuck and do nothing, I think that's when you can really start spiraling.
Do you know, sometimes just putting on your trainers on the first day is huge for some people. Sometimes just buying your trainers is huge for that person.
Yeah.
You know, so many big things start with the smallest of actions. Again, it's all about hope.
Yeah, you're right. No, hope. We need hope. However we get the hope is,
That's it, right? We all need hope, all of us.
And hi, Ashik. Thanks, Jasmine, for organising this. Thank you, Dr. Shefali, for sharing some interesting insights.
So welcome.
Thank you so much for coming. Any questions? Yeah, please let us know. And any comments, please tell us, because we love hearing your thoughts as well. But I've lost track of what I was going to say now. But I think, and I think it is our responsibility to work this out, like what is good for us and what's not. Like maybe we need help along the way, definitely. But at the end of the day, it's up to us, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, because you can quite easily blame everybody for everything. 100%. But at the end of it all, we've got to take responsibility and try something. If it's wrong, then try something else. But we have to keep trying, don't we?
We have to keep trying. Even if you're to go and find a coach, that's still your responsibility, because you thought and you realized that you needed some help. That's still huge. You know, I always feel like knowing that you need help is the greatest start. Showing up, it's the greatest start. You know, even if you like open an app and you're looking at your macros, or learning about what a carb, protein, and fat is, learning about reading your first book on sleep hygiene, you know, anything that you're trying to educate yourself with to give you knowledge to do something better is positive, ultimately.
Yes. And just one thing at a time. Like I learned the other day, I've been reading that book, Just One Thing, with Michael Mosley. And he says, have you read it?
No, but I'm so happy that I talk about this one thing without reading this book. So I'm like, yes, I'm onto something.
And he says about balancing on one foot every day for 1 minute. So I think everyone should try this, and I actually really enjoy doing it. And it takes 1 minute. So 1 minute on each leg. But then the challenge is doing it with your eyes closed. And different ages, different times. But
it's a lot about proprioception. You have to, it works a lot of also different muscles, but also being stagnant in one place. There's a lot to be said about, you know, poses. So if you think about the tree pose in yoga, or any sort of strong pose, It actually helps with, insulin resistance, because it's a form of
Wow.
like pose where you're kind of contracting all those muscles to stay upright. Balance,
Balance,
strength.
exactly.
I
Yes,
see
yes.
so many. You don't have. It doesn't have to be complicated. So when we
Yeah.
look at our like title for today's chat, it is the simple things. It is going back to basics. It is going back to our generational, like what our grandparents used to say about, like, cod liver oil and sleep and, movement. It the new generation has become complicated, and the social media has advertised this, but really simple things work. It doesn't always have to be complicated first.
You're
It
right.
is about nailing the simple things, I think.
And like you said, even when people go to the doctors and like common things are common, but it's funny, but why do you think we don't go for the simple things straight away? Like sometimes it's so obvious that we don't see it, do we? Like the obvious answers, we don't really.
But honestly, the people on the outside have the clearest minds. Most people are either hypochondriac, so that's a problem, so they go for everything. They have no belief in their bodies that they're going to be able to heal. Some people only want natural medicine, so they don't believe in conventional medicine at all, and so they're always looking for that alternative. Some people are on Dr. Google all the time, and then they believe Dr. Google more than they do any
Oh
other
no.
doctor. And so by the
Yeah.
time the actual doctor sees them, they've already created a scenario in their head. And then so the actual doctor has to spend the first like sort of 10 minutes trying to like take that out. They've already gone down this journey of what they think it is. They're not thinking of like the simple things, because they've not had the knowledge to be able to put the simple
Wow.
things into perspective first.
Yes, yes. And I think you mentioned this earlier as well. It is about your relationship with your body, yourself,
Yeah.
isn't it? As well, because I remember when I didn't feel well a while ago, everybody was like, go to a doctor, go to a doctor. And I was like, touch wood, I don't need to see a doctor. I just need to stop and chill out for a while. That's all I need. Like,
Yeah.
sometimes you really don't
You
need
know
to
what
see.
you've been through. Yeah.
Yes,
But it's
yes.
also, I do think though that conventional doctors have got a bad rap. And so because of that,
Yeah.
you would choose to do everything else but go see a doctor. And sometimes I think when you're trying to self-diagnose, I wouldn't advise that either. I'd rather
Wow.
that you went in and they said, there's nothing wrong with you, Jasmine. And then you can
Yeah.
come and then you can do all your other things, as opposed to you doing all your other things first and be like, nothing's helping. I've just waited 2 months. I'm worse
Oh,
than I
yeah.
was when I started. And then,
That's,
so I wouldn't advise people to self-diagnose.
no.
But I also think that there's an element of trust that we've lost a little bit. And I think just finding the right person that you feel you can connect with and talk. I mean, one of the things that I think is super important in today's day and age is communication. Communicate. If you communicate, you create a connection. If you create a connection, I'll get somebody to comply and commit to what I tell them to do. And then I
Yeah.
will see a result. But if they don't believe in what I have to say, or I've not been able to convince them, they're not gonna follow. We're
Yeah.
smart folk now. We do go online. We do second
Yes.
guess. We do doctor shop. We do all those things.
Yes, yes. And at the end of the day, a doctor can only do so much, diagnose but yeah, if the patient doesn't actually follow the instructions or,
Yeah, I mean,
we're responsible. We have to be
but
responsible.
also I feel like it's a really tough era. I mean, that's a whole different conversation. Nowadays, I think people will go down the route of what a doctor says if their insurance will cover it. If it doesn't cover it, they will just try and find to do minimum so that it's covered by insurance. And sometimes a lot of the good testing isn't covered by insurance. And if you allow your insurance to dictate everything, sometimes you don't get what you need, So it's a really tough time, I think, in the medical field right now.
Wow. Are you seeing that quite a lot then?
Yeah. I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that I think the people that come to see me for integrative medicine, so they know what they're coming into. I'm not going to do the typical testing. I do look at functional medicine, integrative medicine. I really look at the whys. It requires different forms of testing. A lot of times it is covered, a lot of times it's not covered, but they're aware of it. And I'm kind of like their last hope. They've been to the doctor, they know they're not sick, but they also know they're not well, and they need to be heard,
Yes,
and
yes.
then they're ready, to like come and see me. So I don't necessarily face it that much, but I
Yeah.
know a lot of people do.
Okay. And you mentioned integrated medicine. Can you just explain a bit more about what that is? Because I don't
So
know if I'm.
so the reason why I call myself now integrative is that I'm not just natural. I don't find that if say somebody comes in and, they require to see a gastroenterologist because it seems to be something acute, I will refer to a conventional doctor. We will speak. We will, once the acute and the seriousness of the situation is gone and it is more chronic, I will deal with what are we doing to change you so that this doesn't happen again. If you're on steroids or you're on, conventional therapeutic medication, but haven't changed anything, well, when you come off that medication, why won't you go back? If you haven't changed anything, the chances are it will go back. So I would want to create that change. I'm all about the little thises that led up to the that. I want to find that. And that requires looking at the body as a whole. I don't just see somebody's digestive system through the digestive system lens. If they've got a cold or a cough, or not so much cold, but if they've got chronic sinuses, if they've got skin problems, that can be coming from the gut too, So I don't look at an individual specialized in a specialist driven way. If your leg's hurting, let's look at your leg. If your ear's hurting, it must be ear, nose, and throat. If your tummy's hurting, it's gastro. We're all connected. The same blood supply supplies all the organs. Everything is connected. So I look at the integrative approach.
I see what you mean. Yeah, well, it completely makes sense, and everything is connected.
That's it.
So, I love
we're
that.
just following a different model now here, whereby everybody's specialized in their own, but they stop to look at how other things can affect other organs. And so sometimes things take longer to get diagnosis because we're looking through such a small straw, but it's actually a huge big lens we need to be looking through. We're not doing that.
Wow. Yeah. So, and I think as well, like you were saying, a lot of people don't, and I've done this before plenty of times. I think I finally learnt my lesson now, like not listening to signs, not paying attention, like our body gives us signs and just ignoring them until it's too late.
That's it. I also think that, I don't know if we're ignoring them, but I think we're just too caught up on everything else that we're not putting ourselves as priority. I said this today to someone in clinic, and I said, and she was like a mother of twins, and I said, if your kids are your priority, your number one, believe me, you are their number one. If something happened to you, you have let your number one down. You are still number one, because for everything you love, for everything you do, everything for, they rely on you too. You won't be able to look after them if something happens to you. We just don't know our body. We don't listen to our body. We're not in touch with our body, and we get in touch with our body a little bit too late. When Joe blogs, oh, he had a heart attack, I better go do my medical, or such and such got diagnosed with cancer. Oh, I better go do my breast examination. It's too late. We need to be proactive. We're too much of a reactive society. And if there's one thing that I'd like to talk more on and try and educate people more on, is that you have to be proactive. If you are proactive, you will catch things. You will learn about your body. You will know what you're eating. You know how you should sleep from early on. And it's almost like we're teaching our children proactive healthcare because they should sleep. They should eat well. I want to make sure that they have all these things. And suddenly we become an adult. We're like, oh, it doesn't apply to me anymore.
And you think it's crazy, actually, like what is more important than our health and what we put into our body, how we treat our body? Like 100%. There's nothing more important. And how come we're not realizing this now? Like
especially now. I mean, we've just gone through like a pandemic where we've had so much, talk on comorbidity related to sort of COVID-19 and the outcomes of COVID-19. This is the one time that I feel like I can have this conversation and tell people it's really not about what car you drive. It's really not about like what bag you hold. If you're going to get COVID, you're going to get COVID no matter how much money you make. It does not discriminate. So the only thing that makes a difference between you and this other person is your pre-existing health, right? And that looks at, again, proactive healthcare. People who did well on vaccines didn't have a symptom versus people who got COVID and then had, long COVID. There's a lot to be said about their pre-existing health, and I think we're still not in tune with that enough.
No, we can't wait until, like you said, it's too late or till something happens to somebody else or.
Yeah, I mean, like diagnoses are getting earlier and early. Kids are now getting autoimmune diseases. I mean, that wasn't the case, in my 20s, and if we're not careful.
so many people are diabetic.
Yeah.
I mean, now it's like
There's so many teens with thyroid disease now. There's so many teens with all kinds of stuff. And if we're not careful, this will be the first generation, our kids, that won't live as long as us.
It's our lifestyle. Yeah. And like, we do have a responsibility. I know I keep going back to that, but we do, don't we? We have these choices and we've got to put ourselves first. But thank you, Dr. Shefali. I could talk to you all day. Now, is there anything else before we go that you would like to say? And please let us know where we can find you.
So I have a clinic in Healthcare City, but it's called Institute for Biophysical Medicine. It's a mouthful. But you can also find me on Instagram on Dr. Chef, and obviously I'm on LinkedIn. Like, reach out. I'm, really, really like approachable, and I love to talk and educate. So no, thank you so much, Jasmine, for having me. Obviously, we can talk for ages. We always have done. So thank you for this. It was fun.
Yes, yes. And Anne-Marie just said, hi, Dr. Shefali. I'm interested to learn more about how our gut health affects mental health, as there is a lot of research being done on this. Can you talk more about it, or perhaps direct some good resources? Yeah, we're just about finishing now, but
maybe we can go down this on another occasion where we can, or you can reach out and I can always talk to you about that. But gut health is everything. It is what predominantly I see.
Yes, yes. And we have to do another live on that. But thank you so much for joining, everybody. And thank you so much, Dr. Shefali. And I will see everybody next week.
Yeah, thank you so much.